Hello everybody, it's Sarah, and I know I didn't upload again yesterday, but I was lazy, I was tired, so today it is. And today you're gonna get a review from me, and in fact so many reviews have piled up for me to do that for the next few weeks at least until the end of April, I would say you're gonna get one non-review video from me a week and then one review video. And today that review video is The Unspoken Name by A.K. Larkwood, which is the first book in the Serpent Gate series, I believe it is called. Let's take a look, because I am good at booktubing, obviously. Serpent Gates. Yes, that is in fact the name of the series. So it's now been around a month since I read this book. I read this sometime in February, and in this video I'm going to tell you all about my thoughts that I had while reading this book. And in fact, my review, which by the way, as always, is going to be spoiler-free, my review is going to be very hard for me to do, because when I do reviews I prefer to have very strong opinions on a book. I either like to absolutely love a book or hate a book. However, this book is very much for me a middle of the road book. If I were to rate it, which this year of course I'm not generally rating books unless they're 5 stars, but if I were to rate it, I'd probably give it a solid 3 stars. I enjoyed the book, I enjoyed my experience with the book, I enjoyed reading it, but I also don't think it's particularly memorable, or that the characters and the story are particularly memorable. And in fact, I think this review will sound way more negative than I intended to, because a lot of the criticisms I have of this book aren't, you know, negative things about the book, but they're more along the lines of these things were good, but they could be better. And yeah, so let's get started with this review. Because of these things are good but they could be better types of criticisms, I also won't do my usual format where I start with my negative stuff and then end with my positive stuff, because without knowing the positive stuff you won't understand why the negative stuff is negative for me. But yeah, let's start with the positive stuff, or I'm probably even gonna do not positive stuff, the negative stuff, but I'm gonna do like a positive thing and then I'm gonna say my criticism connected to said positive thing. But yeah, let's start with the most outstanding thing about the series, and that is probably what most people know about this book, and that is that we follow a non-human main character. I guess you could say she's some type of orc. She's not called an orc within the story, but she's definitely not human. Actually, I think maybe none of the races and characters within this story and world building are human, but I gotta be honest, I don't pay enough attention to descriptions of characters to 100% be certain of that. But I'm like, let's say 70–80% sure that none of the characters are human. So yeah, I find it incredibly interesting that we have a non-human main character, that we have a lot of non-human characters. I thought it offered some very interesting options to the storytelling and to the world building. However, and now we get to the I love this but part of this aspect of the book, I thought that it wasn't in depth enough. I thought that aside from the physical descriptions of the characters not being human played hardly any role within the bigger story. I think the lighting really changed right now because the sun came out. But anyway, I thought that there could have been a lot of interesting cultural world building aspects added to the story by most of the races or all of the races within the story not being human, but I personally did not see that. Now, that might also just be because this is the first novel in a series, so maybe we'll get more of that in later books. But yeah, I just felt like that aspect, the non-human aspect, wasn't explored enough, and it didn't play an important enough part in the story. It was just kind of an add-on, you know, there wasn't really any reason for the characters to not be human. Then continuing on with the world building in general, I thought that the world building was incredibly interesting in this story, and there were so many questions that I had about it, and I thought it was really well done and imaginative. But again, here's the but, that similarly to the cultural aspects with the non-human character, I felt like the world building could have been explored a bit more. And in fact, for a big part of the story, I was like, I do not see where this is going at all. I do not see what the bigger part of the story is going to be. And that kind of a lot had to do with world building, because there was a journey element to it. There was this element to the story where they had to like find this magical artifact, but it was never really explained why we had to find this magical artifact, or it was only explained very late in the story, or too late for me in the story to properly dig my claws into the world building in that part of the story. But again, it's one of those things where I didn't think like the not enough world building was a solid criticism. It was just something where I would have enjoyed some more of it. The same also goes with the kind of sexuality part of the world building and of the storytelling. This is a sapphic fantasy, so our main character is sapphic. The main romance is female-female. We have in fact quite a few queer characters within this story. I am not sure if it's a queer normative or a heteronormative world, because again, I didn't think that we saw enough of the world building and of the gender dynamics within the story to really be able to tell whether or not this world is heteronormative or queer normative. And I did enjoy, however, that homosexuality within the story was very normalized. No one seemed to bat an eye at it, but I have explained that before in other videos. Just because homosexuality is normalized within a world doesn't automatically mean for me that this world is a queer normative world. There's some other elements that play into it. But anyway, I did enjoy that aspect of it, and I in fact thought that the side romances were a lot more nuanced and interesting than the main romance. With the main romance, I sadly, even though I did end up enjoying it, I sadly thought that first of all, it came a bit out of nowhere. The two characters had barely interacted, at least on page, with each other, and suddenly they were already like about to throw away their entire lives for each other, which was a bit sudden for me. And then also I just thought that the chemistry between the two main characters of the romance was very lacking. I didn't feel the chemistry, I gotta be honest. That might partly be because I did not like the love interest too much. I found her a pretty bland and boring character. I also gotta be honest, I wasn't the biggest fan of our main character of Sorspa. However, with Sorspa, I thought she was at least an interesting character, even though I did not personally like her. However, when it comes to characters, I thought that most of the side characters were incredibly well done. I found them so interesting, especially I forgot what his name was, but T something. I thought he was such an interesting and complex character, and I would have loved to see a bit more of him within the story, gotta be honest. But yeah, that was it already pretty much for my final thoughts on this book. As I said, there's a lot of positive things in this book, but most of these positive things then come with a but, where I would have preferred some things to be done differently, some things to be done more in depth, and so on. And so in the end, I can only say that it is a book that I very much enjoyed while reading it, that it is a book where I'm interested in picking up the second book in this series. But I will probably leave my final judgment on this series and on this author until I have at least read the second book in the series. Because a lot of times that can change things a lot. A lot of times that makes it clear that the first book is more set up to the story rather than, you know, its own story. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say about this book. If you enjoyed this video, maybe think about giving me a thumbs up and also maybe subscribing. Tell me in the comments down below if you have read this book, what your thoughts were on it. Also, if you're interested in reading this book and you have any more questions, don't hesitate to ask them. All the links to my social media are in the description box down below, so go and check those out. All the links to my book club of Queens, Witches and Valkyries, where I read one adult high fantasy book written by a woman per month, will also be linked down below. So go and check those out if you're interested in joining as well. The buddy read for April is The Unbroken by C.L. Clark, which I am so excited for already. And yeah, with all of that said, I hope I'll see you soon. Bye!